Poker's legendary champions, next-generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and Jon Chai.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. And today is Tuesday, which for the past year and a half is pretty much the only day that we've been doing podcasts. So, of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jonathan Chai. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. We're back from the poker coaching world, or the poker coaching podcast.
Yeah. We wandered to the nearby booming metropolis and spread our wisdom to a different audience for a week, and now we're back in our usual spot here on the CPG YouTube channel, as well as Apple Podcasts and all that. So yeah, it was fun last week. We went for an hour. I think that for regular listeners of Tactical Tuesday, there was a lot more inputs than I'm used to when we're recording these shows, where it's just you and I, and there's like chat that's going on where we're kind of answering questions, chat. And I know that I probably did a pretty terrible job of describing the board for the listeners of the podcast in audio format. So for that, I apologize, but we
also weren't sure if we were live or not, like 3 times.
Yeah, that's true. It was because YouTube told me that there was no connection, so I assumed, what do I do? And then I just sat there like a dummy for 10 seconds, and I'm pretty sure, before we went on, Justin Saliba told me, all right, this is what you got to do for YouTube. You got to capture their attention straight away. You got to just let the listener know what they're going to get right off the bat. And so what did I do? I went live and then stared at the camera for 10 seconds before I said anything, because I didn't know if it was actually live or not. I learned that there's a delay in the feed back to me. So yeah, I would say not the fiery start that I anticipated, but it was still good experience, fun time, and hope to do it again sometime in the relative near future. And with all that said, if you're one of those that are like, yes, I know that the action was very difficult to follow, I would suggest going to YouTube and subscribing to Chasing Poker Greatness on YouTube, as well as the podcast format, where YouTube has this miraculous thing called visuals, and it's really, really helpful in following the action. With all of that said, John, do we have a theme for today?
Yeah. Loose theme. It's gonna be me being unsure of what to do on the river. Actually, I think in this first hand, it's like the rare river spot where all 3 options seem viable. Not so much in the second hand, but tough river spots at 1K and 500 zone.
All right, sounds like a plan. Let's see what we got going on. Hand number 1 looks like you have a jack and a 10 of different suits, jack of spades, 10 of diamonds. Cutoff opens 2.5x. Pretty easy call. Flop is queen 10-7. There's 55 in the pot. Effective stack is 97.5 BBs. The villain in the hand started with 100 big blinds, so just standard stack size. They start out with a third here on queen 10-7, and this is kind of the first decision point.
I think it maybe be more of a decision point if I had like a slightly better hand or slightly worse hand even. But I think with this right in the middle marginal bluff catcher, I'm just going to be starting out with check call all day facing a third.
I guess I didn't mean that you have options at this decision point. What I really meant was that villain bet a third on queen 10-7 with the queen 7 of hearts. I think that probably says something about the situation. I'm not exactly sure what it says yet, but I imagine that small betting this board is probably not the preferred size. It's probably supposed to be like a bigger bet board. So again, don't really know what to make of it, but that would be my first sort of like kind of just take it for what it is. Don't know if I'm going to use it or not or what it means, but am going to observe it.
But like the full thought process that you're going through right now is like, okay, I would expect like a larger C bet size on this board. This villain went with a very small size, which is a little unexpected. What does that mean about this villain? Maybe it means that they are C betting a little bit too frequently. Maybe they are slightly on the weaker side. Maybe they're not even, maybe they're not even, a reg at the end of the day. But right now, there's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that we can exploit or nothing that we can change strategically with that info. So just kind of like keep it in your back pocket until maybe there is an opportunity to use it.
Yeah, like I think that the sizing that they use kind of makes your decision for you, right? Like you have a hand that wants to continue, wants to realize equity, and you have a good price because they bet small. So your decision on the flop is trivial, and villain kind of makes it for you based on the size that they chose. I'm just kind of like thinking about what that size might mean for future considerations. Turn is an 8. So now you have the old pair plus draw. Board is queen, 10, 7, 8 with 2 hearts and now 2 spades. There's $90 in the pot. You check. Villain bets big-ish. Not super big, I guess, like 75%-ish or so. They bet 65 into 90. I think, again, you don't really have much of a decision here on the turn. You're basically just pencil in to check call. And there you go. River is the deuce of spades. So now you have second pair, the backdoor flush completed, and you have the backdoor flush blocker, which with the jack of spades, which is pretty nice. And now villain goes ahead and chooses the same size that they chose on the turn.
Yeah, this is where I feels like I could do anything. Feels like I could fold. That would be fine. Feels like calling is at least on the table facing this size with kind of what at the end of the day just looks like a normal bluff catcher with second pair. Got a nice little straight blocker, nice little flush blocker. Then you start thinking about, well, I got a nice little straight blocker and a nice little flush blocker, and and I have a hand that like might be on the fence between calling and folding. Can we put raise on the table? Should we even? Is this hand too strong to even think about raising? I feel like generally that's your feedback when I bring these sorts of hands in, is that like, hey, this hand can very easily just go in your check calling range. I think you're, usually say that I think I'm like stretching or reaching too much for bluff raises in this spot.
Well, I mean, I guess the first question that I would ask myself is like, what's the worst hand that they value bet? I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think you know the answer to that, but like we can theorize, right?
The worst hand that they value bet, I would expect it to be like a strong queen.
I don't think they would bet king queen, for instance. Like I think ace queen would be like the minimum. Mm-hmm. And so with ace queen being the minimum, that's the first like thing that I think about when I'm considering raising, right? It's like, okay, so like I'm trying to fold out top pair, top kicker plus when I raise the river. And that's like the specific range that I'm targeting here in this spot when the backdoor flush completes. You have some decent things going for you, I think, in that, the queen is not a spade. So you do have like a fair amount of repability, like in your check call, check raise range with like your queen high flushes. I think those hands would just make a lot of sense. It probably is going to boil down to like how often they fold two pair or set as to whether or not you should raise. My inclination is to think that they probably aren't folding out two pairs or sets as much as you need them to. So I would not raise personally and probably just end up calling the river.
Why are you why is like the threshold like the two pair and set line? Why are you not thinking about like, oh, why isn't it okay if we can just fold out all their over pairs, or we need to start folding out some straights, maybe even to think about raising here? Like how do you know where to draw the line?
Well, because you're getting, when you raise, right, you have a price to bluff. Like, so essentially, depending on the size that you raise to, I imagine you're probably just going to jam, which is like 2x. So basically when you jam 2x on the river, you need to fold out like 66% of their range or so to raise profitably. So then like I asked myself, okay, so like what is the bottom, what's the best hand that's in the bottom 66% of their range? And I think the answer to that is 2-pair. While like top pair, top kicker, and then over pairs make up a decent chunk of it, that's probably like 40% or so. You're going to have to start folding out the next tier of hands. And that's probably going to be in like the 2-pair region or the set region, right? So that's why I kind of make that distinction as like how do I feel about trying to fold out 2 pairs at a very high frequency? Just because I think that's the category of hands you need to fold out at a very high frequency in order to make jam profitable.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I think that's actually a really good process for trying to figure out like what hands do I need to fold out on this river for my jam to be profitable. It's just like, so just to like kind of rephrase it. So you're starting to think about like, okay, what hands bet the river this size? Or sorry, what's the range that value bets the river this size? And then you need to fold out about 2/3 of those hands. What is like, so we know that like the bottom end of that value betting range is going to be like ace queen and like overpair type hands. Maybe that like brings us up to, like 30%, fills up like half of the 66 that we need to fold out. And then in order to fill up the rest, the last like 33%, we need to move up one more category of hand, which is going to move us up to like the 2-pair and set region. And if we can't fold out any of the 2-pair set region, then we're just not getting enough fold equity from their range to justify bluffing the spot.
Yeah. And you got to fold out like over pairs and top pair, top kickers, like on an absolute basis, right? I think all of this is sort of stretching the imagination as it relates to generating enough folds by jamming the river here.
And the reason that we only care about their value region when they bet the size on the river is because we could just check call with our 10 and beat the entire bluffing region. So we don't gain anything from folding out their king jacks or their bricked hearts or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is like, it's an interesting conundrum where they're like king jacks and ace jacks will make up some portion of their folding range. So like they could like, buoy you up to potentially
66.
hit the 66% marker. And I think that's okay. And that is a part of it, like, because they just will have some brick draws here that you fold out. But even still, even if like, assuming that you're not calling the river here, they essentially, when you're not calling the river here and you need about 30% equity to call, you're saying that they have less than 30% air in their range. Like,
right. Otherwise we would just call with Jack 10.
Otherwise you would just call, right? So you're going to get like, 25% fold equity or 20% fold equity from folding out their air. Then you have the top pair, top kickers. Then you have the over pairs, and then you have the 2-pair to make it to that 66% marker. And I just think it's going to be tough. Like you're going to need to fold out some really, really strong hands. And I just think it's tough to hit. Whereas, clicking call, if it is a mistake, it's going to be much smaller and it's going to be really close, like one way or the other. I think.
Right. This is a spot where they have tons and tons of natural bluffs, right? That
I would think
we wouldn't surprise to see if we check called here with a 10 and 1. So
yeah.
Okay.
Like ace 9, king jack, ace jack, king 9, hearts.
Yeah. 5, 6.
Ace king, whatever. Maybe like, So you jam with all of that said.
If there's any doubt about what I was going to do.
You jam, they fold, and they fold a straight. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good for the prospects of generating enough fold equity here when you're folding out straights.
Yeah, maybe we can get up to the 66. I feel pretty good about getting up to the 66% if they're folding this hand.
Yeah, if they're folding straights. And I think like one thing that I always consider here, is that, yes, this opponent folded a straight. Will every opponent fold a straight here? Will the majority of your opponents fold a straight here? And the villain that's not folding a straight, against the villain that's not folding a straight, are they folding a set? Are they folding not. 2-pair, right? So like, there's also this like spectrum of opponents that you'll play against where like some will be capable of like folding everything and some will be capable of folding nothing. And that makes things really tricky when you're playing on an anonymous platform.
Yeah. Definitely. You usually run into like one of those two extremes.
Yeah.
Like the player is just like, oh, they just always have a flush here and they fold everything. Or the player who looks at a set and is like, well, this is kind of the same thing as a straight. So if I'm folding this, I'm folding straights. So I just can't fold this. And then you get looked up by 7-8 of clubs or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Hand number 1, Jon +1, Brad -1. Stick around after the break. To raise or not to raise the river, that is the question that we'll try to answer. Coming right back.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right. Welcome back from the break. Mr. Jon, you want to take the reins and start breaking down the second hand?
Yeah, so this one's played at 2-5 zone, so we're not going to have any good reads or a good feel for who we're playing against, so we're just going to go off of sizing and stack sizes like we usually do. Folds around to the button, opens to 2.5x off 100 big blind stack, probably safe to assume he's a reg. Small blind starts with $170 and flats the open, so we can be pretty sure that the small blind is a fish. I'm in the big blind with ace-8 off. Would be peeling here, even just for facing the button open, but really, really happy to get in there once the small blind fish is giving us a good price to peel. Small blind starts out by checking, I assume.
Yeah. What's the board?
Oh, 9-6-5, two-tone, 2 hearts. We have the ace of hearts, so we flop overcard, gut shot, and the backdoor nut flush draw. 37.50 in the middle. Small blind fish starts out by checking. I'm going to be checking range here as well. Big blind goes out, sticks out 1/3 size flop C bet.
The button sticks out.
Sorry, the button. Yeah.
Man, this is tough. We might need to add a trio here to read boards. The button bets a third, 3 ways, 5-6-9, 9-5 of hearts. Small blind folds. Jon check calls. I think both.
Thought about folding here? Yeah.
No. I'll say there's not a world where you can fold, especially having the backdoor nut flush draw. Like I think that's kind of like a critical. It's like a really, really important piece of the equation. I would actually consider raising the flop.
Yeah, I think that would be my. I would almost prefer raising here than flatting, but
yeah, like essentially, like this hand is such a great candidate to raise. It blocks straights, and it gives you a hand that can barrel on flush completers on the turn or the river that aren't flushes or straights or sets or whatever, right? So I think like having the nut flush blocker is like really, really, really nice here, and chunking this into your like check raise range where you have a bunch of flush draws, you have a bunch of like hands that have a lot of equity. This hand doesn't have a ton of equity, but it has great properties that would allow it to do well, I think, in your holistic flop check raise strategy. So like that would be the way that I would go. Would just start with a check raise here and then, barrel a lot of hearts and kind of play turns and rivers like as they come.
So the one thing that I'm like that's like really, I don't know, like the reason I even asked about like just folding here in the first place, and then probably the reason why I was a little tentative about check raising here was that like I did not think that this is like even close to a range bet from the button.
I don't either.
Okay, and just thought that this like was worried that like basically when the button decides to c bet 3 ways, on this very, very dynamic board, that they're just going to have so much equity in their c betting range that check raising here would be, I don't know, was worried about like punting basically versus a player that decides to see bet this spot.
I mean, to me, it's like, it's strategy against strategy, right? And I just like ask myself, how does ace 8 off with the ace of hearts fit into my holistic strategy? And I think like check raising is a really good place for it. And yeah, like you're probably right that the button is pushing too much equity when they bet here 3 ways, especially with the short stack fish. But with that said, like your hand does have great properties to check raise against, over pairs even, right? Like it's not like you can generate lots of folds downstream if you start with check raise against over pairs here on the flop. And you may be peeling like every single 7-8 off in this spot too. Like that's another, like you could just have every 7-8 off because the small blind flats so and then you complete as well. So yeah, I think like you just have so many good hands here that this like lowish equity hand would just fit really, really well into your check raise range.
Yeah. I really like check raise now after talking it over with you. I mean, like, I think one thing that we didn't even mention is that like check call, like the downside of check calling here is just like the real lack of implieds for us. It's like, yeah, we have a gut shot, but like, what happens when we make a 7? Like, yeah, we have a backdoor nut flush draw, but like what happens when it goes heart? Like, do we ever, can we reasonably expect to win like large pots? Probably not. Like we're not really coolering anyone at that point because of just like the obviousness of when our draws get there. So yeah, I think that's another reason to just check raise this hand versus check calling and just trying to take my equity, getting a good price.
Nice. Agree to agree. Turns the 8 of hearts, which by the way, for the listener, the board is now 5, 6, 8, 9 with the 9, 8, 5 of hearts. And boy, it would have been nice to check raise with this on the flop. You would have gotten the rare. Yeah, definitely turn this one into a bluff. This is the one that you should absolutely turn into a bluff. But now we're here, and I'm guessing you check. Yeah, you check the flop. I think, or the turn. Man, this turn is like so interesting, like in so many various ways. Like I think you could lead the turn. And I think that would be pretty reasonable on this 4 straight flush completer versus what's presumed to be a pretty overpair heavy button range. But I guess checking, you also get to fully realize. So anyway, this is a good card to make my argument about check raising the flop.
How do you not realize when you start out with donk? You get jammed on? That doesn't happen. You donk small enough where you don't get jammed. Yeah, I again, like I'm making like arguments against what I actually did in game. I think donking here is way better than check calling again. And yeah, I think that I should have gone for the check raise on the flop. And if I didn't go for the check raise on the flop, I definitely think I should have donked this turn. Because again, like all the same things happen on this turn that I was talking about on the river. It's like, okay, yeah, great. I have enough flush draw and like enough equity to call. Maybe like my pair of 8s is good, but like if I don't improve on the river, do I ever get to call with my 8s? Do I just get bluffed by the same range of hands that's bluffing this turn anyways? And then when I make a heart on the river, again, like what do? Do I like donk sometimes? Do I like check, do I go for a check raise and like hope to just basically like get one bet out of like a bluff or a flush that's like value betting itself on the river? So for all those reasons, I just like donking here better than check calling, which is what I end up doing.
Yeah. What's really funny about all this is I would just fold the turn facing this bet. Like if I check called the flop, I would check fold the turn once they bet big and we're out of position on the 3 flush and 4 straight. Like I just think they have so many flushes in their range. Like it's just I don't know how to turn a profit here check calling with ace 8 with the ace of hearts. Like, oh, we river a 4 flush. Great. Like now we're just like magically going to get a bunch of money out of the villain on the 4 flush. Like that's so anyway, like I just don't see a clear path to victory check calling here. So like I would, if I check call the flop, I would just check fold this turn specifically. But I guess you're a different man who's
there's almost
going down a different path.
There's like a sick, like sick may be too strong, but there's like a part of me that's like on this turn when I check call with ace 8 of hearts that I'm like, I hope he has a good hand. Like I hope he has a 7 or a small flush. Like I would rather they have like yeah, okay, it's nice of like if when they do have like bluffs and like we check raise the river, but like there's like a part of me that's like hoping that I face another bet on the river that's like not all in.
Well, that part of you that is sick is the part that's saying almost only have really good hands here. That's the like I think by check calling the turn, it makes sense that you're happy that you hope they have a strong hand, because I think they almost only have really strong hands when they bet the turn here. And I think that's kind of the problem, is like, it's just not to mention, and this is like kind of an outlier event, the 6-7 of hearts is a straight flush. I think on, you know, like the 6 of hearts, the 7 of hearts, the 10 of hearts, like the queen of hearts, there are hearts that come out when you like check and they big bet the river that you don't even want to jam, because like jamming feels like a punt. As like, even if the queen of hearts comes and you check and they overbet rip, I would make an argument that you should probably just fold facing the overbet.
I was mostly hoping that they would have good hands on the turn and that the river would brick and that they would bet those good hands on the river again, and then
so that you could check jam in.
Yeah. That's the reason I was hoping they would have a good hand here.
Gotcha. I mean, I think you could just check raise the turn and jam the river too, right? Like that's just another obvious.
Yeah. Another good way to utilize the ace of hearts.
Yeah. But you check call. The river's the 9 of diamonds, which that is a good card for you.
This is just like the best, probably one of the best rivers ever.
Yeah. Flop was 9-6-5, 2 hearts, turn 8 of hearts, completed a flush. River's a 9 of diamonds, so now it pairs the board. You check. Please tell me this dude's not going to go for it. Or Dudette, whoever they are. Yeah, they bet the river.
Oh, thank God. This is what I was dreaming of on the turn. I was like, you just have a hand that's so good on the turn that you're not going to be able to bet. You're not going to be able to check back the river. And I'm going to have some, hopefully, I mean, this was like especially good because the board paired and I, have an 8, which is a little bit helpful in terms of blocking 8s and like 9-8, but also just like on non-heart rivers, just being able to use the ace of hearts as like a check jam here. I don't know how hopeful I am that I like fold out like a flush, but I'm pretty hopeful that I could fold out at least like a 7.
I think you'll fold out flushes. I think the ace of hearts still matters here on the river because I think the ace of hearts blocker properties still matter on the river because when you jam, I think the primary hand that bluff catches would be the nut flush, because the nut flush could think that you're jamming lower flushes for value, but all their lower flushes, like now they're essentially capped at like a king high flush and a queen high flush and a jack high flush. And I think that's just really, really, really good for your check jam. Like, so you have like the perfect hand to check jam with on this specific river. You've got the 8 blocker, which, let's be real, probably doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things because they're probably not betting with the set on the turn. And then you have the nut flush blocker, which is probably their primary bluff catcher. And yeah, it's just, oh man, this villain, they asked for it and they received. You have my seal of approval here with the river decision, at least.
Played one street right.
They fold, and yeah, it wouldn't surprise me for them to have like king, queen of hearts, queen, jack of hearts. I think hearts are I think hearts are pretty much the bulk of their range. And they have the queen, 7 of hearts. So
you're right that the 6 of hearts river would not have been jammable.
Well, there's 3 hearts on the board, the 5, 8, and 9. So there's actually a lot of hearts. Like there's already one straight flush available. And there's a lot of other ones. But yeah, like
final question about this hand. If you're the guy on the button with the queen, 7 of hearts, I think flop is fine. Turn is good too. What do you do on the river with queen 7? You just check back?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Maybe. Depends. Depends on who I'm playing against. Like in zone, I check back. I think that like checking back is just, I think you should probably be donking this river, honestly, instead of checking like on the 9 pairing. I think that the nut advantage significantly changes from the turn to the river, and that makes it to where like you should be donking. And I like when you lack full houses in your range, you just don't get to bet when the top card pairs, because you don't have the nut advantage and you expose yourself to getting just absolutely crushed like in this spot. With that said, you also have to run into the opponent that can find these like crushing hands to jam the river with. And I think that the primary hands that are going to jam or that need to find jam are probably going to be straights. Some sort of like 7X that called the flop and then checks the river and then faces the big bet. I think the straights are going to be the most jammable hands. And maybe population doesn't find that enough, and that's going to allow you to value bet a flush. But I personally would check behind for all the reasons that I said. I just think like I don't like betting the river once there's full houses available and I don't have them.
Yeah. I think also like a small consideration too is just having a 7 in your hand with the queen 7 of hearts. Like a big part of the range that you're hoping to get called by when you value bet the river with a flush is going to be the 7X straights. And I think when you actually have a 7 in your heart to go along with your flush, it's probably an extra reason to check back the river.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I don't know where to stand on this hand. I don't know if we have a day without incident or a day with incident. This hand was kind of all over the place, but
I thought of the theme. I mean, we can't. This is the problem with Tactical Tuesday. We can't like blow the theme at the beginning because it just makes the hands not interesting to follow along, or just reveals what I'm going to do on the river. But I think the theme for this episode should be what is it? They never fold if you never try. The line from poker coaching.
Yeah, they never fold if you never try. That's the truth. This one feel really good, and they fold. So
yeah.
You get the fold. You fold the queen high flush. Look at the man go. Somehow he winds up in the perfect spot on the river after check calling twice to find the river jam.
You see what I mean on the turn though, where I was kind of like, man, I really hope you have like a flush or a straight, because like you have to bet the river with those. Yeah, and
yeah, I see what you're saying. Now that you say it like that, actually makes a lot of sense. I think that's good, really good. Yeah. All right, that's all we got for this week.
Next week.
See you in 1 week, I believe. Halloween. It's Halloween. Ooh, baby, Halloween.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.